Hello and welcome to World News Tonight here on TVP World. I'm Anna Jabłońska. Our main story tonight is the strategic partnership between Poland and the UK. British Defence Secretary John Healey is visiting Warsaw and is meeting with Polish Defence Minister Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz. This is not the only topic we'll be covering tonight. Let's look at the headlines. A new European Commission report on rule of law says Poland is making strides toward restoring rule of law, but still has a lot of work ahead. As soon as President Biden announced he's dropping out of the race for the White House, Russia's propaganda machine launched its attacks against Kamala Harris. The Polish prosecutor's office is investigating an assassination attempt against a key Belarusian opposition figure. Now, coming straight from Berlin, the UK's new Defence Secretary John Healey has arrived in Warsaw, where he's meeting with his Polish counterpart Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz. Our reporter Marek Steele is following the British Defence Secretary's visit on the ground, and here's his report.
British Defence Secretary John Healey is in Warsaw today, which actually is not the first stop of John Healey in this part of Europe. His first stop after taking office was Kyiv, Ukraine. There, he reassured the UK's commitment to further support Ukraine despite a Labour government taking power in London. And actually, Warsaw is not his first stop today, as earlier today he met with Boris Pistorius in Berlin, so the German defense minister. Now he is meeting with Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz, the Polish defense minister, and the main aim of this trip to several European capitals is to reaffirm the UK's commitment to European security. Actually, this is something that the new Labour government wants to sign with the EU. This could be a new security pact. Poland and the United Kingdom have had very close relations when it comes to military cooperation, and this is also part of today's meetings, but more about Polish-British cooperation in the military in this next report.
Orzysz, 70 kilometers from the border with Russia. This NATO base is home to most of the British troops deployed to Poland.
For us, the security of the eastern flank is very important. We cannot do it alone. We always count on our allies, and the United Kingdom is an ironclad ally of Poland.
In March, Polish Defense Minister Kosiniak-Kamysz said these words standing alongside John Healey's predecessor from the Conservative Party. But little has changed since.
There is a consistency of approach between the United Kingdom and its partners in Europe when it comes to defence. So ministers, governments come and go, but the Ministry of Defence, the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office are holding pretty much the same line.
Today it's John Healey that's visiting Warsaw, the third stop in his tour after Kyiv and Berlin.
Britain has been contributing to the effort in Ukraine, as has Poland, but they haven't been working closely together. So this is how I see it. I think this is just part of a wider strategy of the British to rebuild relations with Europe after Brexit.
Ukraine is an important area of cooperation between Warsaw and London. But Poland and the UK are also working together on arms development programs.
The Miecznik program of frigate building, where UK companies like Babcock and the supply chain there joining with Polska Grupa Zbrojeniowa to build a new class of frigate for the Polish Navy.
Earlier this year, the UK agreed to extend the deployment of the Sky Sabre anti-aircraft system, strengthening the entire eastern flank's air defense capacity.
And as you can see, we are waiting for the press conference to start. As soon as two officials appear, we will, of course, follow up when they're making their statement. So we'll keep you updated. Now, Poland has made significant progress in judicial reforms and ensuring the independence of the prosecution. This is according to the European Commission's 5th annual Rule of Law report, which monitors developments and strength of institutions in all EU member states.
The Commission has also noted improvements in Poland's fight against corruption, but emphasized that the problem of overly broad immunities continues to hamper the effectiveness of high-level investigations. This year's edition of the report shows that the bloc is much better placed to detect, prevent and address emerging challenges to rule of law than 5 years ago. Each year, the Commission includes new recommendations for EU member states. 68% of the 2023 recommendations have been fully or partially addressed, showing that the report has become a genuine driver of positive reforms. However, in some EU countries, systemic concerns remain, with the situation further deteriorating. Italy, Hungary and Slovakia have come under fire over the continued decline in democratic standards. Hungary in particular showed a lack of progress in several areas, such as rules on lobbying, the prosecution of high-level corruption cases, transparency in state advertising and public media independence.
After the abortion protest outside the Polish parliament on Tuesday, the idea of a referendum on this divisive issue has resurfaced, but Polish women's rights activists are against it. The discussion is growing heated and could become an issue in the 2025 presidential elections in Poland.
The issue of abortion has always divided both the Polish public and the country's political scene. And now some members of the ruling coalition have begun floating the idea of a referendum on the matter of abortion. But Tuesday protesters didn't want to hear it.
There shouldn't be any referenda on human rights, no.
In the past, there have only been 2 successful and binding referendums in Poland. One on adopting the current constitution and the other on joining the European Union.
The high importance of the question was deciding. It will not be the case in the question of abortion rights. Going to vote on human rights should not be the question at all in such area of law. It should not be the question of voting.
In an interview in our studio, one of the leaders of the Polish women's strike said the issue of abortion is likely to become one of the most important topics of the upcoming presidential election in Poland.
So now they are talking about how it's impossible, it shouldn't be done at all. They will lose this argument during presidential elections. They will have to say yes or no. It will be harder to lie. So I'm just waiting for it.
Better abortion access was one of the main campaign promises of Donald Tusk, now Poland's prime minister. But it's difficult to pass the easing of restrictions in the parliament, as conservative and agrarian MPs are against liberalizing the law. Any bill on easing existing restrictions would also need the approval of the president. Andrzej Duda, hailing from the Conservative Law and Justice Party, is likely to veto any liberal legislation on this issue. Coincidentally, improved abortion access is a key policy for US Vice President Kamala Harris, who is on track to become the next Democratic nominee in the US presidential elections.
And staying on Kamala Harris, since the announcement of her replacing Joe Biden in the race for the White House, the Kremlin's propaganda machine has been sparing no effort attacking her expertise, race and gender. Russian media personalities and even members of the Russian State Duma have all taken shot at Harris, all the while comparing her to her prospective rival, Donald Trump.
And it is my intention to go out and earn this nomination and to win.
With US Democrats reveling after Kamala Harris managed to secure the support of much of her party, the Russian propaganda machine has been firing up its engine, preparing for an all-out attack on the VP. Russian officials, analysts, experts, and other public figures launched into their tirades almost immediately following Harris's nomination, calling her a lame duck's accomplice with a nuclear button. That nickname, however, is far from the worst.
Kamala with a nuclear button is worse than a monkey with a grenade.
Not only that, but in their eyes, Kamala Harris is a much worse choice for Russia than Joe Biden ever was, given that her support for Ukraine is, at the very least, as strong as Biden's.
If Harris stays, what do we know about her? She is a distilled evil. At least Biden represented a remnant of the old, conservative America.
Additionally, after his withdrawal from the race, Joe Biden was also described by Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov as predictable and more preferable to Russia than Trump. Speaking of the former president, the Republican candidate is rumored to double down on US support to Ukraine, contrary to popular belief. In an article published in the Daily Mail, former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson said he believes Trump is likely to increase Washington's military support for Kyiv in order to force Moscow to sit down for peace negotiations on Ukrainian terms. With both US presidential candidates being viewed as unfavorable by Russia, it seems that the Kremlin might be stuck between a rock and a hard place.
For more about Russia's reaction to Kamala Harris' potential new role, stay after the news for my conversation with Marcin Zaborowski, Policy Director at Globsec's Future of Security program. Stay tuned. Now, one of the key figures in the Belarusian opposition, Paweł Latuszka, appeared at the Polish National Prosecutor's Office today, where he testified in an investigation into an assassination plot against him, hatched by foreign intelligence operatives.
The probe into the plot to assassinate Paweł Latuszka, alleged to have occurred in August 2022, has been underway since this April. Latuszka offered some comments on the case after the hearing.
The prosecution is looking to press charges of involvement in a conspiracy to murder, in this case me. The murder was likely planned by officers of a foreign intelligence service. I did not petition the prosecutor's office to open an investigation, so I understand the case was opened by the state.
Previously a member of the Belarusian government under Lukashenko, Latuszka was dismissed from his post after he publicly came out in support of the protests that broke out across Belarus in the wake of the sham elections in 2020. He has since been living in Poland and actively engaged in opposition efforts.
We're running for freedom, and Belarus will be free.
In 2023, he was sentenced in absentia to 18 years in prison by a Minsk court. Lukashenko's regime has been cracking down on opposition figures with particular tenacity in recent years. In the past 6 months, there has been a significant escalation in threats against activists.
Already 5 people, Belarusians, died in the prison since 2020, and actually everybody who's in prison now, especially political prisoners, they are slowly dying there.
One such prisoner is Polish journalist Andrzej Poczobut. He was arrested several times on charges including libel for his criticism of Lukashenko. In 2021, he was arrested during the crackdown on the Union of Poles in Belarus and sentenced to 8 years in a penal colony. The Polish Ministry of Foreign Affairs has been negotiating his release, but to no avail.
We have a lot of statements from Minsk, from official Minsk, from Belarusian regime, but we should treat it as a propaganda, as a PR of Lukashenko in his typical style.
There are currently nearly 1,400 people believed to be political prisoners in Belarus. Most of them were sentenced in politically motivated trials in connection with the events that took place during and after the sham presidential elections in August 2020.
Now, the press conference with Polish Defense Minister and UK's Defense Secretary started. Let's take a listen to what they have to say.
I showed the videos from those attacks. Thank you very much for that support from you. During the NATO summit, as well as today in Poland, we are talking about the subject of the eastern flank of NATO, the border between our world and the world to the east. This is the joint responsibility of NATO member states. There is a very clear outcome of that, and it means that very soon Iraqi group of the engineering forces is going to be deployed from the UK to Poland, and they are going to make a decision about supporting Poland in the development of Shield East. Already today I can say that soon a group of the engineering troops is going to come to do the reconnaissance in Poland, and they will continue their mission. So thank you very much for that. That is one of the outcomes of today's conversation. Another one is the declaration of deploying 6 Eurofighters for the policing mission of patrolling of the Polish airspace next year. Thank you very much for the declaration. We have British troops that support Poland. There is also the air defense system Sky Sabre that protects Polish sky, and the airfield in Jasionka. Thank you very much for holding this system in Poland until the end of the year. It is a very tangible demonstration of our relationship and the joint commitment. As far as Ukraine is concerned, our attitude is very similar to the Ukraine needs the military support and the help for those who are looking for safe place, both in Poland and in the UK. They need our solidarity. The solidarity is demonstrated by both Poland and the UK in the form of different donations, as well as the security guarantee agreement that was recently signed in Poland, but also there are other agreements that were signed by the UK with Ukraine. The Secretary of Defense was recently in Odessa. We also talked about it. We also talked about how very important the support is. Poland and the UK are going to tighten their cooperation also in defense industry. We are working on the subsequent projects for the production and the joint activities for the development of the armament industry, for the production of ammunition of 155 millimeters. We are also involved in Narew program and Miecznik program, which we develop, and the UK is a strategic partner of ours. So thank you very much for any support that you are granting to us, Mr. Secretary. It's been just 2 weeks of you being in office, but you have been showing that support for the development of the defense industry cooperation and friendship between Poland and the UK. Once again, great congratulations on your great victory, a huge majority in the parliament, a very strong mandate, and a very determined focus on the Polish-British cooperation in the area of defense, in the area of defense industry, for the development of our relations and friendship between Poland and the UK. Thank you very much indeed for that. Thank you very much, Prime Minister. And now I would like to invite Mr. John Healey, Secretary of Defense of the UK, to speak. Dziękuję, panie ministrze. Dziękuję bardzo za to powitanie w Warszawie. Dziękuję bardzo.
Yes, breakfast in Paris, lunch in Berlin, dinner in Warsaw, and perhaps a beer after this is over as well. But it was important for me to come to Warsaw today to state very clearly the new UK government's unshakable commitment to NATO, to Poland, and to the alliance's eastern flank. Our two countries have a long history of friendship. And Poland, since Putin launched his brutal and illegal full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Poland has demonstrated magnificent leadership, particularly on military aid, on defense spending, and on the logistics of getting assistance to the Ukrainians to fight off this invasion. So I would like, on behalf of the British government and the British people, to thank your government, your country and your people for everything you are doing to support Ukraine in their fight. Like you, our new government stands steadfast behind President Zelensky and his people. That was why it was important for me as a first priority in the second day of my job to go, as you say, Minister, to Odessa, where I spent the afternoon with President Zelensky and his team. I committed the UK to speeding up the delivery of the military aid already pledged, to stepping up the package of ammunition, guns, essential kit they need, to spending £3 billion this year to support Ukraine, and £3 billion each year for as long as it takes. Now, defence cooperation, Minister, as you've said, is a very important part of the growing bilateral relationship between our two countries. Training Ukrainian forces, developing integrated air and missile defence, intensifying industrial cooperation, and, yes, next year, the air policing, enhanced air policing over Poland as part of the NATO mission. And I want to build, as the new UK Defence Secretary, a stronger defence partnership between our two nations, between us as ministers, between our armed forces and between our industry. And I want that bilateral relationship to develop into a strategic partnership, which means that we can deal with problems together. It means that we can develop opportunities together.
We just heard from UK's Defence Secretary John Healey and Polish Defence Minister Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz on close cooperation, on close military cooperation between the two countries. But now let's go back to our conversation. Now, after US President Joe Biden announced that he would not be running for re-election, Kremlin-backed news channels have used the opportunity to ridicule Biden and his decision. Now, Vice President Kamala Harris quickly became a target for Kremlin-backed propagandists as well. Harris has secured the support of the majority of Democratic delegates to become the party's nominee for president. That means she is on course to be named the party's official candidate. Now, also, according to the Daily Mail, former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson said he believes Trump is likely to increase Washington's military support to Kyiv in order to force Moscow to open peace negotiations on Ukrainian terms. Now, I'll discuss both of these issues with my guest, Marcin Zaborowski, Policy Director at Globsec's Future of Security program. Good evening, sir. Thank you very much for joining me tonight.
Good evening.
Now, like I said, Russian officials, analysts, experts, and of course TV personalities, TV Russian personalities, fired off at Kamala Harris. They attacked her expertise, race, gender. What are they trying to achieve by that, in your opinion?
Well, I guess the idea is really to radical the new candidate for Democratic nomination. And a very likely one to get it. Kamala Harris is known to have expressed a strong support for Ukraine. She's been behind the policies of increasing US aid to Ukraine. For example, the recent package of $61 billion. That is a package that she strongly supported, and she worked behind the scenes to convince some members of the Congress to vote in favor of that. She also she's been meeting with the President Zelensky on several occasions. I think 5 or 6 times at least she met with him during her term as a current vice president. She was the one who delivered strong statement at the Munich Security Conference in February this year, strongly arguing in favor of maintaining support for Ukraine. And then later on during the conference in Switzerland, she deputized for President Biden, the one who met with Zelensky and who maintained the support. So basically what the Russian media are doing here, they're simply afraid that that now she could win this presidency, she could race. She made it clear she would continue to support Ukraine, and she's a strong and energetic person.
Oh, that shouldn't be a surprise to any. I mean, we expect her to carry on that policy of helping Ukraine and defeating Russia. But also I have this quote from Oleg Matcheyev, a member of Russia's parliament, the State Duma. If Harris stays, what do we know about her? She is a distilled evil. At least Biden represented a remnant of the old conservative America. In Harris, you have the devil in his purest form. Now that's hate. That's really mean, and it's an attack on her personally. But who are they trying to persuade? Are these words towards their own citizens, or they're hoping for wider viewership when it comes to these hateful words?
Well, I mean, as you rightly pointed out, this is a nonsense. This is really hate speech. I'm not sure that it's really necessary to comment on individual parts of that, but the purpose is very clear. The addressees of this content are Russian-owned voters or Russian-owned citizens, and the idea is to maintain basically this hateful perception of the West. And the hateful perception of the United States. That's just another argument that really in the war against Ukraine, the Russians are not just fighting against Ukraine, but this is the prelude to hitting the entire West. that comes out in that hateful and silly comment, really.
Well, yes, you're right. Now, additionally, after Joe Biden withdrew, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said it was predictable, and Russia prefers Trump more. I'm sorry, I got confused here. Predictable and more preferable to Russia than Trump. Now, Trump is the one who had closer relationship, political relationship with Putin. So, do you think this is just causing another, stirring another chaos, or what do they mean by this? Because who do you think actually Russia would prefer, Harris or Trump?
I have no doubt that Russia would prefer Trump. They said it on several occasions. It's clear that the chemistry, the relationship between Trump and Putin has always been much warmer, if not really collegial in many respects. And also Trump on many occasions did say that he works with the Russians, he respects them, he respects Putin, he likes Putin. So I have absolutely no doubt that the Russians would have preferred Trump to stay in race and to win this race. But they're also not stupid. They know that if they keep saying that we want Trump to win, that the effect could be the opposite of that. They know that the endorsement of Trump would be then played in the American media and would be could have an adverse impact on the election results. So they are basically playing a game here. They are pretending that they are not for Trump, but in reality, it's very difficult for me to imagine that they would have preferred any other result.
But with all that said, we heard reports that Boris Johnson met with Donald Trump right after the Republican National Convention, and he posted on social media that we discussed Ukraine at length, and I know that he will give the strong and decisive leadership necessary to protect democracy against aggression, saying that Trump would help Ukraine and then negotiate peace between the two countries. That is a surprising statement, don't you think?
I don't think so. I don't think it's surprising, really. I mean, Boris Johnson is Boris Johnson, meaning Boris Johnson is the guy who led the campaign to withdraw United Kingdom from the EU. He's the guy who accepted Russian money during this campaign, and he's also the guy who on numerous occasions endorsed Donald Trump. So this is really not sitting too well with his strong support for Ukraine, with his endorsements of Trump. Means that he has to combine the two things together. So he's basically, again, a little bit like the Russians, but perhaps not as deviously. But he's also playing a game. He's telling us that Trump is not too bad, and actually Trump could be harder on the Russians than Joe Biden. But we have absolutely no indication that this is true in any respects. Donald Trump picked up as his running mate J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance, who on several occasions said that I don't care about Ukraine. Ukraine means nothing to me, and I will always vote against the aid and support for Ukraine. And Donald Trump himself said, I'm against sending additional military aid to Ukraine. So basically, I think that Johnson's statement is nothing else than him being, somehow he needs to verify and to explain his own position on Trump.
Well, presidential elections in the United States are going to take place in November, so we'll see who wins and what will change when it comes to Ukraine and its fight against Russia. Sir, thank you very much for your view on this, and have a great night.
Thank you very much.
And with this, we conclude World News Tonight. Stay with us for more news and comments here on TVP World.